Hello, everyone, and welcome to the 10-minute Bible lesson. We appreciate you joining us today. Well, we've been doing a lot of parables. I kind of enjoyed them. But I've noticed something about some of these parables that Jesus told, they were in response to what someone else had said. And that's really the true with the parable that we have today. In fact, it's a short parable, but it's in response to what someone said. And I'd like to read that comment that this man said to Jesus that caused him to say the parable. Here's how it goes. It's in Luke chapter 12, verse 13. He says, "Then one from the crowd said to him, 'Teacher, tell my brother to divide the inheritance with me.'" Now, what do you think Jesus said? Well, here's what he said. "But he said to him, 'Man, who made me a judge or an arbiter over you?'" And here is what he said. "And he said to them, that is the whole crowd, 'Take heed and beware of covetousness, for one's life does not consist in the abundance of the things he possesses.'" So this man wanted Jesus to make his brother divide the inheritance with him. And you know what? It kind of reminds me of another time where Jesus' friends, Lazarus, Martha, and Mary, Martha came to Jesus and said to Jesus, tell Mary to come and help me." And you know what? He wouldn't do it. And he wouldn't do it here either. And he told the man, "Who made me a judge or an arbiter over your affairs?" You know, Jesus didn't come to be a judge. He said that. He says, "I have not come to judge, but I've come to save the world." Now, the next time he comes, he will come as a judge. But this time he didn't come as a judge. And so that's what he told the man. He said this. He said, he actually refused. He just wouldn't do it. He says, "I'm not going to do it." And then he warned against covetousness. Now, what is covetousness? Well, covetousness is something that we all kind of have a little problem with. And let me explain. It's the desire to have more and more. You know what I'm saying? It's the desire to have stuff and keep having stuff. And even it causes us to want what someone else possesses. And so Jesus warned about covetousness. And then he said this. He says one's life does not consist in the abundance of the things he possesses. And that's where the parable begins. So let's go ahead and read the parable. It's in Luke chapter 12, and it begins in verses 16 and 17. So he said, "Then he spoke a parable to them, saying, 'The ground of a certain rich man yielded abundantly. And he thought within himself, saying, What shall I do, since I have no room to store my crops?'" So this man's life is not all that much different than a lot of people's lives. That is to say, there's nothing really wrong with growing crops and growing a lot of crops. The problem was this man's life focus was on just that. It was what his life was all about. In fact, it was just like the main point. And I have to ask this question to you and to me. What is the main point of us being here? Is the main point of us being successful? Is it about having a career and doing everything we can in that career to become successful? Well, I'm not sure that that's the reason that we're here. I think that if we do that and we ignore eternal things or spiritual things, then we really have a problem. Well, let's go on and see what else that Jesus had to say in this parable in Luke chapter 12, verses 18 and 19. He said, "So he said," that is the man, "I will do this. I will pull down my barns and build greater, and there I will store all my crops and my goods. And I will say to my soul, soul, you have many goods laid up for many years. Take your ease, eat, drink, and be merry. So this man was proud of his accomplishments. And it's okay if we do something and we do it really well. It's okay to have a little pride about that. I mean, to be glad and to be thankful for that. The problem was that we need to consider is the end game. Now, what is it that I mean by the end game? Well, that is to say, what is it and where is it that we want our life to end up? Where do we want it to end up? This man thought he had arrived. And he says it, you can just see it in the statement that Jesus says about him. He says, what am I going to do? I'm going to tear down barns. I'm going to build bigger barns. I'm going to fill those with all our crops. Then I'm going to say to my soul, take it easy. You've got stuff laid up for many years. You can just eat, drink, and be merry. In other words, man, you've got it made. You've accomplished your goal. Now you can just sit back and take it easy. He was actually presumptuous about two things. He was presumptuous about his own soul, and he was presumptuous about how long he would live, because he assumed that he would be able to enjoy all those things for many years. And you know what? None of us know how long we have here. Our life is short, and it will certainly end. And we don't know when it'll end. But the best thing to think about is where we will be when life is over. Will we have put our focus on eternal things and our relationship with God? That's a good question. So let's look and see the last two verses in verses 20 and 21 in chapter 12 of Luke and see what Jesus said. But God said to him, fool, this night your soul will be required of you. Then whose will those things be which you have provided? So is he who lays up treasure for himself, now get this, and is not rich toward God. That was the man's problem. He lost his focus, didn't he? Now remember that this parable was in response to what a man in the crowd asked Jesus to do, was to cause his brother to divide the inheritance with him. And Jesus said, you need to take heed and beware of covetousness, because one's life does not consist in the things that he possesses. So it's an interesting thing. It's actually a matter of priorities. What's really important to you? Listen, are you going to put all of your marbles in this life, or are you going to actually lay up treasures in heaven? That's what's important. Listen, there's nothing wrong with having good crops, but it's a very grave mistake and error to neglect our eternal salvation. And that's what this man did. In fact, think of this. Just think of this. God himself called him a fool. Most of the world would have said, this man is not a fool. He's done everything he should have done. Not what God said. God said this. He said, you're a fool, because this day your soul will be required of you. Then what will happen to all of that you put? Listen, God wants us to serve him and to live for him and to make him the focus of our life. Isn't that a wonderful parable? It's a great parable. I love this. I love the teaching of Jesus. It's absolutely fantastic. And how could it not be, since he was actually God manifest in the flesh? Well, listen, thank you for joining us today. We appreciate it. I hope you have a really good week and you'll tune in and join us for it. I think we even maybe have another parable next time. Thank you.